fuck is Moan right now? Are you fucking kidding me? Alright, cool. We have someone who's mowing in the middle of a recording session, so that's how you know it's gonna be a real good session. Hey everyone, back to the basics here. Back with another desperate plea for a barber shop. Now, I didn't really want to make this video so soon for a reason. Mainly because I just put a video out about another anime series, and I don't want to give off the impression that this is gonna become a normal part of this channel. Just to clarify, I'm not a big fan of anime. I'm hardly even a fan of anime to begin with. Aside from the obvious choices like Evangelion, Bebop, Fooly Cooly, Dragon Ball, Akira, One Punch Man, and a couple others, I don't even give a shit about anime, truly. However, I'd be lying to myself if I said I didn't want to discuss Dragon Ball Z right now, because there's a special element to it all that I think a lot of people either miss the point to, or just flat out don't discuss. Also, just before I get into this, I want to mention that this will probably be like the only video I make on this series, because just making this video alone is putting me in putting me in some dangerous territory. Have you seen the Dragon Ball Z community on YouTube? Because I don't think you've witnessed true hell until you've ventured out to that dimension entirely. That's not even a part of our normal algorithm, alright? That's just this whole other fucking thing.
So a little while ago, I did a video where I debunked an article, and I guess that opened up the floodgates, because since then I've gotten tons of people who have sent me this article here from CBR.com. This article, though, I got problems with this article, and when I get done kind of going through all of these things, you're gonna kind of understand that when I say things like, and I've said this in the past, like Screen Rant and CBR and Blasting News should not be covering Dragon Ball, you know, you're gonna understand why. And the issue I have with this article, it's written by a guy named Sean Aitchison. Now, I have no idea who this guy is, and the issue is this. The issue I have with this article is I have nothing personal against Sean Aitchison, but when you read this article, but it's also wrong. This article, though, like, the dude's coming off like he knows more than Dragon Ball fans. When you actually go through the article, there's so many things he got wrong. So I'm gonna go through these things and kind of clarify what he got wrong. Basically, he says, look, he's not passing any quizzes or anything, but Goku's far from stupid. Actually, that's very incorrect. Every single person I know, every top tier Dragon Ball historian that I know, Goku is driving the family car with Gohan and Chi-Chi. In the manga, bro. What a stupid freaking article. But overall, this article is pretty much hot garbage. Well, buddy, you can't say that if you're filling your article with nonsense. Well, no, buddy, a multiplier is an increase in power. Problem is, buddy, if you're gonna claim to be a Dragon Ball expert, he's saying it might not be considered canon. Well, here's the problem with that, buddy. But here's the issue, buddy. You're an idiot, because in the Dragon Ball manga, the scene where Bardock is in space about to get killed by Frieza is in the manga. Dragon Ball's manga, which is, let me tell you exactly what chapter it was. Chapter 392. Now, I did a whole video, an entire video called The Prince of All Saiyans, where I broke down this whole thing about, you know, Vegeta. I've debunked this I don't know how many times, and I actually debunked it years ago in a video called Over 9000 Explained. So what I would suggest is checking out the video I did called Can Saiyans Breathe in Space, where I broke down all the different, but Ultimate Gohan was explained. In fact, one of my videos called Ultimate Gohan Explained is a 1 million view video. I already covered this in a video called, what the hell I called the video? The Dragon Balls Explained. And I remember after that episode aired, 66, it was a discussion topic for days after that. I made a video about it called Plot Holes versus Retcons, where we talked about that. And I made another one called the Potara Retcon, where I discussed like how in the original story, dude, I have a whole series called Dragon Ball Mythbusters. How about the fact that Bulma's last name is not Briefs? I got that video dropping very soon.
Jesus Christ. In any case, I want to fill in some background behind my relationship with the series before I actually dig into it all, because I feel as if I can sort of give a better perspective from an outsider's view of this series. You see, I never actually grew up with Dragon Ball Z. I didn't watch much anime as a kid outside of Naruto and Soul Eater whenever I was a faggoty middle schooler. However, despite all of this, I always thought one thing to myself in regards to how the show looked from even before I saw it. Hey, That's pretty neat, I guess. Even before I really sat down to watch it, I always had this weird feeling about Dragon Ball Z that it would be one of those shows that I'd have a lot of fun with. And this was before the fan base became nothing but people arguing over power scales and taking the show more seriously than even its own creators did. So, you could basically say I was spoiled. However, one day, I actually did decide to watch it. And it turned out, I was right about my own assumptions. However, after I watched it, I came across some criticisms of the show and its overall writing, and it got me to wonder, why did I enjoy it as much as I did? Because the criticisms aren't entirely wrong, but at the same time, even without holding any nostalgic ties to the series, I still found myself to have a lot of fun with this show nonetheless. And I believe that, to this day, the show still stands to be amongst not only the classic anime series, but some of the best too. It didn't entirely add up in my brain, and it would especially seem confusing if you actually watch my content as well, because I am indeed a very analytical gaywad. It then occurred to me that a lot of the reason why it wasn't adding up in my brain initially was because Dragon Ball Z had been able to achieve a feeling that many video essay channels just overall or outright ignore. It was fun. Now, I want to make something clear because there are a couple different versions of Dragon Ball Z out there, and the fan base seems to be split as to which one is superior. While I didn't watch all of the original, I watched as much as I could while also watching Kai alongside the original. From my experiences with both versions of the story, I found myself to enjoy the Kai iteration better. This being due to the fact that even though Kai does remove a lot of the blood and gore that the original Dragon Ball Z had, it not only has the greatest dub in the entire franchise, a dub so good, it's not even debate amongst fans, it's just straight up canon.
Tien, Jiaozu! Vegeta, I didn't realize you were going to be here too. Is that okay? As a matter of fact, it isn't. I still haven't forgotten what happened the last time we met. You disgust me. How can you stomach him, Yamcha? Ha! Loser! What? It's Tien and Chiaotzu! So, Vegeta, you've decided to show your face on Earth again. That's all you have to say? Hardly. But I've always thought actions speak louder than words. How can you stand the sight of him, Yamcha? Ha! Bring it on! Fine!
But it also fixes the biggest issue that the original series had, which was somewhat of a crippling issue at times throughout the show. Kai substantially alters a lot of the pacing that Dragon Ball Z had. Dragon Ball Z's pacing has become an ongoing gag to people who aren't even familiar with the franchise, for fuck's sake. And it especially shows in the Frieza saga, which actually became my favorite saga after Kai fixed a lot of the pacing problems. It's an understandable issue in the original because the manga was still being written as the show was coming out, so they had to put in a shit ton of filler episodes and drag the pacing and the action out to the speed of a fucking concrete hardening. But it still doesn't help in the grand scheme of things, and it still deserves criticism regardless. You kinda have to stop and ask yourself if the blood is what made Dragon Ball Z what it was, and simply put, I don't think that's the case. It's the characters, the villains, the fights, the sense of progression, the thrill of adventure that makes Dragon Ball Z so iconic, and the fact that we now have a more professional and cohesive way of watching this series. I mean, shit. I'm willing to go on record with saying that Kai is a superior experience for witnessing the story play out. And of course Kai has its own issues, but I mean, come on! Have you heard Frieza's voice from the original compared to the Kai dub?
I'm just moments away from achieving my maximum right now. Aren't you curious? You're a Saiyan, right? Then no doubt you must be burning to see my true power. Exasperating to find you've underestimated your opponent, isn't it? And that's yours truly at just 70%. Oh, but fear not. The grand unveiling is underway.
She sounds like a chain-smoking granny who sniffs glue in her free time, as opposed to an actually menacing antagonist who could destroy planets at his fingertips. Back to the video. Something that a lot of video essays seem to ignore is just the overall feeling of fun and enjoyment. And yeah, it makes sense as to why it's not a feeling many people try to touch on whenever they want to look smart. The feeling of joy and genuine happiness is very subjective in nature. Everyone has their own definitions as to what makes them happy. However, I feel as if there's a very specific reason as to why Dragon Ball Z is able to maintain it so much better than some other shows that try the same thing but never quite get it right. And it doesn't really have to do with the writing of the show. I was able to grasp the formula of the show within the second saga alone, out of a show that has 4 main sagas and 16 sub-sagas. A large part as to why I still found DBZ to be a great anime has to do with its self-awareness and its ability to remain consistent tonally. A big issue that comes from other series that try a similar format is that halfway throughout the show, they just go against what they establish and they try to be something that it just isn't. In fact, that's one of the main issues I have with shows like My Hero Academia. It starts off as a character-driven story with lighthearted humor and fun action, but by the end of Season 1 alone, the drama and tone become less focused on the characters themselves, and suddenly, the show begins to focus on the intensity of the fights rather than how the characters feel during the fights themselves, which completely and utterly betrays the idea of a character-driven action story. In contrast, Dragon Ball Z immediately starts with our heroes facing their toughest enemy yet, one that even ends up killing Goku for fuck's sake. This not only introduces the idea of villains that have the potential to be stronger than our own protagonists, but it also introduces the idea of sacrifice and making crucial decisions for the sake of bettering your foe. These are the foundations in which Dragon Ball Z thrives off of, and is why it has aged as well as it has. Dragon Ball Z is quite honestly the definition of progression. At first we battle Raditz, who proved to be the strongest foe both Goku and Piccolo have ever fought against. Then we go to Nappa, who is even stronger than Raditz, but then Nappa is killed by Vegeta, proving Vegeta to be even stronger. From there, Vegeta gets defeated by Frieza, Frieza is defeated by Future Trunks, who can't beat Android 17 and 18, proving that the androids are more powerful than Frieza, and the list just goes on. Quite honestly, while the people who criticize the show for its writing aren't entirely wrong, I also feel as if they've missed the point of the show to begin with. And the same can go for hardcore Dragon Ball fans who try to pick out every single inconsistency within the universe. Sure, we can talk about the existence of morality in the universe, how morality being highly subjective across cultures would clash against whatever the Kais and the gods and the dragons pertain their own morality to be, and how confusing the whole idea of a preset morality could be in this universe, as well as any universe for that matter. But that doesn't matter, because the show knows damn well that it isn't written to be some Akira or some sort of Evangelion. The show was written with so much love and care that even though there are some contradictions and plot conveniences scattered throughout the show's runtime, overall, it always knew exactly what it was. And that is the true appeal in Dragon Ball Z. If you don't believe me, you can just look at Dragon Ball GT, a show that went so hated by both Dragon Ball fans and its creators that it's not even considered canon. The show was riddled with inconsistent tones so much, whether this was the attempted return to a more lighthearted adventure, but with the consequence of entire worlds exploding, or even the character of Baby, who on paper should have been the most deep and sympathetic antagonist the entire Dragon Ball series has ever seen, but instead just became another power-hungry enemy, like Frieza or Cell. Not that there's anything wrong with these two characters, but they work so well in contrast because they both came from a show that understood its own scale and capabilities as well as it did. Because of that, alongside with all the love and care that the creators had for the show, we have such iconic moments like whenever Goku turned Super Saiyan for the first time, or whenever Gohan finally killed Cell, which not only showcased how powerful he could truly be, but was also the main thing the arc up to this point was building up to. Or even whenever Vegeta sacrificed himself in the Buu Saga in order to save the world. There's a ton of these moments that stand out to me in my head and feel just as emotionally complex as any other show or movie would, despite the formula. You don't have to be Kubrick tier in order to get us to care about certain characters or to make your story that more effective emotionally. Dragon Ball Z proves that it's okay to just have fun with the show, while simultaneously showcasing a perfect understanding of its own story, and that, within itself, deserves praise. This is Exro, telling you to shut the hell up and watch the show already. Bye bye, gay guy.
Shut the fuck up, Bulma! No one asked you! God, I hate this movie! Holy